In this video, we're going to create this motion graphic using the timeline inside of Photoshop. We'll begin by making a new file. I'm going to set the width for 1000 pixels and the height for 750 pixels, resolution is 72. Next, we'll copy and paste the background element into the composition. And I'll just scale it to optimize the size of the file. You can make it 70% if you wanted to. And then I'll immediately save the document. Next, we'll bring up the picture of Da Vinci's Belle, and we'll edit her out from her background. I'll hit W on the keyboard, and from the tool selection, I'll choose Object Select, and I'll make a selection of the woman, and I'll copy and paste that. And then from that picture, we'll take the wooden railing by itself as well. I'll use my rectangle marquee tool. I want the wooden railing to go completely across the document, so I'll make a selection of it hitting Command A. I'll hit V on the keyboard, and if I hold the Option and the Shift, I can drag a duplicate across, keeping it on the same layer. I'll deselect. Next, we'll open up the picture of the Annunciation. We'll take the angel out of that one. And make it a little easier, I'll use my marquee tool, and I'll hit Command J to put the angel kind of on its own layer. It's going to make it a little bit easier, I think, to select it out. Now I'll hit W on the keyboard, and we'll use the Object Select to begin the selection of the angel. So that did a pretty good job, but I need to get the hair here as well. So what I'll do is I'll hit B on the keyboard, set the hardness of my brush to 100%, and with black on top, I'll go and paint in the rest of what I need. And I'll click back on my quick mask icon, Command C to copy, and I'll paste it into the comp. And that'll end up over on the left-hand side. Next, we'll open the bottle, and I'll hit W on the keyboard, use the Object Select, and then I'll click on the quick mask icon on the bottom of the toolbar, and I don't want to keep the shadow and reflection at the bottom of the bottle, so I'll get my brush tool, I'll hit X to put the white on top, and I'll subtract that out. And I'll copy that and paste that into the comp, and save. Now the bottle's a little bit on the small side, so we'll hit Command T, and I'm going to just bump the scale up on this to, I'll make it about 130, and I'll put it above the wooden railing. This is going to fade in the center, and logically it would be on that rail. We're going to put in two text elements. One will be the word absolute with the font impact, white. I'll hit T on the keyboard, choose the font, hit my cap lock, and I'm going to make the font size 90. And then we'll put in Catch the Spirit. I'll just duplicate the letter absolute by hitting Command J. It's going to go down here somewhere. I'll hit T on the keyboard, select the text, Command A, and let's change the font to Myriad Pro, bold. And I'll take my cap block off. I'll start off with open quote, and then Catch the Spirit, close quote. The font size is too big, so I'll select my text once again, and then I'll reduce the size of it to 60%, and it'll eventually be over here in the lower right-hand corner. I want to put an arrow glow with the color from the sky on the word absolute, so going to the word absolute, I'll double click, or I'll go down to FX, and I'll put the arrow glow on. I'll leave it set for multiply. I'll max out the opacity to start, and I'll click on the color picker, and I'll roll out and get the dark blue from the sky, and I'll leave the spread at 10, and then the size, I'll make the size 10, and then I'm going to drop the opacity to 80. Now I'm going to go down to Catch the Spirit. I'll double click on the layer to get the layer styles, or I'll go to FX, and again we'll put an outer glow on it. And I prefer to have some of the brown from the wood railing for this. I'll leave the settings exactly the way they are. Grabbing the color picker, I'll roll over and get the darker value of the wood. Now we have everything we need to do the motion graphic. Next we're going to go to Window and we're going to choose Timeline. And in the timeline you'll see the option to create the video timeline. I'll click on it. But the setting that I'm looking at is for video clips, that purple bar. I'm going to click on the lower left-hand corner on the three boxes to get the frame animation timeline. I'll start by turning off all the elements in my layer window with the exception of the wood rail and the sky. Picture of the woman will animate on screen first, so I'll select the layer, turn on the layer, and it's going to start off screen on the left on frame 1, and then on the timeline I'll click on the new frame icon, which is the same thing as if we were in our layer window, and in that frame I will drag her back onto the screen where I want her to be, roughly over here. And you'll see that frame 1 has nothing, frame 2 has the picture of the woman. Now I've put on show transform controls here as well because it shows me my content when it's outside the document perimeter. Now when we first introduce, very often with Photoshop it'll say 5 seconds, which is not what we want. So I'm going to shift select both of those frames, and then if I right click on either of them I'll see the option for no delay. And you see it says 0 seconds now. Now we want to tween that, which means we want the frames in between where it will come on gradually. So at the timeline, if I go to the left of the new frame icon, there are a series of diminishing circles. I'll click on it and I get this thing called the tweening window. I'll set the frames to 30. Hitting return on the keyboard, I'll tap my space bar now to start and stop and to see what I have. So the 30 frames represents a 1 second speed in video time. I'm going to go to the end of the timeline, which would be frame 32, and now I'm going to introduce the layer with the angel. Selecting the layer, I'll turn it on, and the angel is going to be coming from the right hand side and then across the screen to the left. I'll add a new frame, and I'll put the angel where I want it to stop. Once again, I'll click on that series of little circles, leaving it at 30, and I'll click OK. If I go to tap my space bar, I now have the woman coming from the left and the angel coming from the right. I'll tap my space bar to stop the movie. I'll scroll to the end of the timeline with the gray bar at the bottom, and I'll select frame 63. Now at this point we're going to introduce the word absolute, and it's going to come in from the top down. So I'll turn it on and I'll drag it off the screen at the top. Adding a new frame, I'll click and drag it down. I'll click on the tweening button. Now it's not going that far, so we're going to reduce the frame added to 15. And I'll tap my space bar. And we should have something like this. I'll stop my timeline, go to frame 79, and next we'll introduce Catch the Spirit. At frame 79, I'll turn on Catch the Spirit, and it will come from the bottom up. I'll shift and drag it off, add a new frame, click and drag it back up onto the wood rail. I'll click on the tweening button again, leaving it at 15 because it is a short distance as well. I'll tap my space bar to preview, and we should have something like this. Finally, we'll fade in the bottle of absolute. Selecting the layer at frame number 96, turn it on, place it where I'd like it to be. In the layer window, I'll reduce the opacity to 0. Adding a new frame, I'll put it back at 100%, and then on the tweening button, I'll set it for 30. Tap my space bar to preview. The last thing we want to do now is to put a 1 second hold at the end of the movie. I'll click on the new frame icon, and then on the tweening button, with it set at 30, I'll click OK. And that will give me a 1 second hold at the end of the movie. Now we'll go to File, Export, Render Video, naming the file and render. And that's it.